Then Bildad the Shuhite responded, "How long will you hunt for words? Show understanding, and then we can talk. Why are we regarded as beasts, as stupid in your eyes? O you who tear yourself in your anger, for your sake is the earth to be abandoned, or the rock to be moved from its place? Indeed, the light of the wicked goes out, and the flame of his fire gives no light. The light in his tent is darkened, and his lamp goes out above him. His vigorous stride is shortened, and his own scheme brings him down. For he is thrown into the net by his own feet, and he steps on the webbing. A snare seizes him by the heel, and a trap snaps shut on him. A noose for him is hidden in the ground, and a trap for him on the path. All around terrors frighten him and harry him at every step. His strength is famished, and calamity is ready at his side. His skin is devoured by disease. The firstborn of death devours his limbs. He is torn from the security of his tent, and they march him before the king of terrors. There dwells in his tent nothing of his. Brimstone is scattered on his habitation. His roots are dried below, and his branches cut off above. Memory of him perishes from the earth, and he has no name abroad. He is driven from light into darkness and chased from the inhabited world. He has no offspring or posterity among his people, nor any survivor where he sojourned. Those in the west are appalled at his fate, and those in the east are seized with horror. Surely such are the dwellings of the wicked, and this is the place of him who does not know God." Then Job responded, "How long will you torment me and crush me with words? These 10 times you have insulted me. You are not ashamed to wrong me. Even if I have erred, my error lodges with me. If indeed you vaunt yourselves against me and prove my disgrace to me, know then that God has wronged me and has closed his net around me. Behold, I cry violence, but I get no answer. I shout for help, but there is no justice. He has walled up my way so that I cannot pass, and he has put darkness on my paths. He has stripped my honor from me and removed the crown from my head. He breaks me down on every side, and I am gone. And he has uprooted my hope like a tree. He has also kindled his anger against me and considered me as his enemy. His troops come together and build up their way against me and camp around my tent. He has removed my brothers far from me, and my acquaintances are completely estranged from me. My relatives have failed, and my intimate friends have forgotten me. Those who live in my house and my maids consider me a stranger. I'm a foreigner in their sight. I call to my servant, but he does not answer. I have to implore him with my mouth. My breath is offensive to my wife, and I am loathsome to my brothers. Even young children despise me. I rise up, and they speak against me. All my associates abhor me, and those I love have turned against me. My bone clings to my skin and my flesh, and I have escaped only by the skin of my teeth. Pity me, O you, my friends, for the hand of God has struck me. Why do you persecute me as God does, and are not satisfied with my flesh? Oh, that my words were written. Oh, that they were inscribed in a book, that with an iron stylus and lead they were engraved in the rock forever. As for me, I know that my Redeemer lives, and at last he will take his stand on the earth. Even after my skin is destroyed, Yet from my flesh I shall see God, whom I myself shall behold, and whom my eyes will see and not another. My heart faints within me. If you say, how shall we persecute him? And what pretext for a case against him can we find? Then be afraid of the sword for yourselves. For wrath brings the punishment of the sword, so that you may know there is judgment. I would say, wow. Wow. And just the reality of it all. Whew. Just you sense the struggle. You sense the anguish of his soul and truly the struggle going on even behind the scenes of ultimately what all this means. So let's go back and let's take a look. Chapter 18, verse 1. So this is the second time that Bildad has spoken. And as we've said, he, as well as the others, have becoming more very straightforward and even attacking to Job. Verse 2. How long will you hunt for words? Show understanding and then we can talk. All that you're saying, Job, it doesn't make any sense. You're just looking for some rationalization to be able to explain what's going on. You know, if you ever will just give some understanding what you have to say, then we can talk, but right now you're not making sense whatsoever. Verse 3. Why are we regarded as beasts, as stupid in your eyes? This is one of the first times I remember that there's actually now a response to what Job is saying in relation to what Job is also doing in becoming very frank and very clear about where they, as he saw them, where they are really at and how off they really are. And so he's responding in a personal way. Why are we regarded as beasts, as stupid in your eyes? Verse 4, oh, you who tear yourself in your anger. You know, oftentimes, unfortunately, the human nature is if you feel attacked, that you're going to attack back, and you're going to say something to as well inflict pain, if at all possible. So after he makes this statement about Job, why are we regarded as beasts and stupid in your eyes, and then he comes right back. Oh, you who tear yourself in anger. And so, you know, it's the thought of these guys that, in fact, one of the reasons why Job is saying the things he's saying is that he actually is disintegrating within himself. He is actually within feeling guilty. He's feeling that these things truly are things because of what he's done. And now he's tearing himself apart, even though he doesn't realize it. That's what they believe, that in fact, a lot of all of what his statements are that are, in a sense, trying to clear himself, it's just really a sign that he knows his guilt and that he's tearing himself apart. Then he adds into verse 4, for your sake is the earth to be abandoned or the rock to be moved from its place. I take what he means by that is that, you know, is this really as important as you're making it? Is this truly something of the significance that you are giving yourself to arguing all of these cases? In other words, they're saying that he has, in a sense, in his own world, this perspective that this is worth arguing about, but in fact, he's not that important. It isn't about him, and the idea is, for your sake is the earth to be abandoned. I mean, is this earth-shattering? Is this something that is terrible? And honestly, if I were Job, I would say, yes, it is. Yes, it is. I've lost my family. I've lost everything I've owned. I've lost my reputation. I emotionally am a wreck. I'm about ready to perish. Everyone is turned against me. And then I'm in anguish. I'm still suffering. This disease has not gone away. So yes, it is earth-shattering in my life, and it's significant that I would talk about it. It is important that I talk about it, and they don't understand. Verse 5. Indeed, now Bildad continues here. Now watch. Indeed, the light of the wicked goes out, and the flame of his fire gives no light. The light in his tent is darkened, and his lamp goes out above him. Now, the one thing that I had a little bit of trouble with is that word indeed. Initially, it makes it almost sound like something in relation to what he has just said, but it's all about the wicked. And so if you look at that, it almost seems as though the implication through everything that he's going to say now is that you, Job, you don't even realize what's going on. You are being torn apart by yourself, and you don't have understanding, or I would talk to you. But all of this is an indication that you have gone to the place where you have become a wicked individual and you are against God, and that is why all of the things that are happening to you are transpiring. So the idea of wicked there is not just the idea of someone stumbles and someone, they'll have like a period of time in their life where they will choose to go the wrong way, and it's something that is not typical of their nature, but they stumble. Now, it's a wicked person is someone who's intentionally, with their will, choosing to reject God. And so where Bildad's going here is he's actually now saying, what you're doing, Job, is you're proving the fact that you have actually crossed over, and now you have wickedness in your life. You are rebelling against God, and all of these claims that you are innocent, that you held your integrity, and nothing has changed, there's no violence in your hands, that type of thing. It's all just a smokescreen because of the wickedness in your life. So we'll go through this, not spend a lot of time on it, but it's pretty harsh. So again, verse 5, indeed the light of the wicked goes out, and the flame of his fire gives no light. The light in his tent is darkened, and his lamp goes out above him. His vigorous stride is shortened, and his own scheme brings him down. Now we see here the analogy of the light, that the light goes out because of wickedness, and that means revelation, that means even the light of life, the things that just bring something that is meaningful in a person's life. The wicked forfeits that because they're walking away from God, and they're walking more and more into a place that is counter to everything that life is about. But then he goes on and he says, his vigorous stride is shortened, and his own scheme brings him down. We're going to go now into a whole group of analogies of the fact that Job brought this upon his own head. Now, he's not saying directly to Job that, but he's talking about the wicked, and the implication is Job is wicked, so it's the same sort of thing. In the reaping what you've sown is all through here in a whole variety of different ways. Into verse 7, and his own scheme brings him down. Verse 8, for he is thrown into the net by his own feet, and he steps on the webbing. A snare seizes him by the heel, and a trap snaps shut on him. A noose for him is hidden in the ground, and a trap for him on the path. Bildad would say that's how God has set things. God has set traps for those who are wicked. And they will walk into, in fact, even their own traps, and they will actually be caught in them. And again, as we've said from the beginning of the book of Job, there is truth in that. If you reject God, God's not mocked, and you will actually be eventually, at some point, caught in what you've devised. That is true. But he continues, and it's such an emphasis that it's way, way overboard, as you're going to see. Verse 11, all around terrors frighten him, the wicked man, and harry him at every step. They assault him. So if you are wicked, you are going to have things come at you from every angle, terrors in your life. You're going to have fears. You're going to be assaulted in many different ways because of your turning your back on God. Verse 12. His strength is famished, and calamity is ready at his side. So, even physically, you're going to be affected. Now, in some of these things that he brings up now, again, indirectly, I think he is actually saying, yeah, and Job, that's why your strength right now is actually at its weakest point, because you have turned your back on God. And calamity is ready at every side. How many calamities have you had, Job? Verse 13. His skin is devoured by disease. Well, case in point, right here, you, Job, you have boils all over your body. And it's a statement to the fact that previous to this, you made decisions to actually wrong God. The firstborn of death devours his limbs. Literally, it is actually eats his flesh. That's what it means. The firstborn of death eats his flesh. He is torn from the security of his tent, and they march him before the king of terrors. So whatever you found security in, whatever you put your trust in, you're going to lose it because of your choices. Verse 15, there dwells in his tent nothing of his. Brimstone is scattered on his habitation. There's going to be a definite indication that God's judgment is upon that person's life. There's going to be things that just, one, demonstrate the fact that he's actually stolen from others. And then number two, that God's judgment, because of those sorts of things, God's judgment of brimstone, sulfur, actually being within his own tent, God's judgment will come right down to him personally because of his decisions. He continues, verse 16, his roots are dried below, and his branch is cut off above, both sides. No water, nothing to actually bring life. And then on the other hand, his branch, the outcome of his endeavors end up being actually cut off because of, again, him reaping what he's actually sowed. Verse 17, memory of him perishes from the earth, and he has no name abroad. Reputation is shot, and he has no name that anyone would respect. Verse 18, he is driven from light into darkness and chased from the inhabited world. Now, I want to just stop there right now. If you choose that wicked path, are you going to find God's judgment on you? Yeah. Are you going to find that it eats you alive, in a sense, because you've chosen to ignore God? Yeah. Are you going to leave light and you're going to go more and more into the darkness and lose everything? Yes. But the one thing that I want to bring out here is that it's all, there's a part of this that it's all or none. And what I mean by that is, think about people that you know that live a lifestyle of wickedness. They've turned their back on God. They want nothing to do with God. I would just ask practically, is everything that Bildad is actually explaining here actually happening in their life? And you got a whole Bible full of different folks like Habakkuk who wondered why the wicked weren't being actually punished. You got a whole Bible here where sometimes it's a very difficult struggle that a person actually experiences when we're trying to actually understand, hey, wait a minute, I'm trying to live for the Lord, and look what's happening in my life, and look at that guy. He's got it at ease. He's wealthy. He's doing good. He's got people all around him. And sometimes it's difficult to understand that. The reason why I bring this up is because Bildad is, in my opinion, is a person who is in an extreme in his perspective. Extreme in the sense that it's like cause and effect. You do something bad, you're going to get judged immediately. Something, you choose to actually sow that's evil, well, it's going to come back to you and your health is going to decline. And you know what? You're going to be lost in 1,000 different ways. Well, first of all, God is, he's patient. And he doesn't want any to perish. And so, yes, ultimately the wicked are going to be judged. But this side of eternity, there is oftentimes given an extension that person could repent. Judas was with Jesus all the 3.5 years. And did Jesus know right from the start that he was going to betray him? But he still gave him the opportunities. He still sent him out sharing the gospel. I believe that Judas actually healed some people. Now, he absolutely was wicked. But that's not taken, in a sense, for granted. It's not, in a sense, dealt with in a predetermined sort of way. Every person lives out their life. And you know what really makes it difficult? Is that typically people are not 100% one way or not, and not another. Sometimes there's a mixture. And there's a process to determine what the eventual outcome will be. So to just class, okay, you're wicked, you're not, is a simplification there that ends up with great problems. I think of the tares and the wheat. You know the parable of the tares and the wheat? Where the enemy sowed tares among the wheat of the master owner of the property. And after a while, they started growing up. They looked just like the wheat, and the servants said, well, do you want us to go out and yank up all those tares? And the owner said, no, you might pull up some of the wheat along with the tares, so wait to the harvest. And so there's wisdom in waiting. And I just was saying this week to somebody, I think that there's going to be a lot of people in heaven that you don't think are going to end up being there. Because they're going to make a last-minute decision like the man on the cross. But I think also there's going to be a lot of people that you think are going to be in heaven that won't be, who had a self-righteousness, but it wasn't a genuine heart for the Lord. So the reason I bring this up is the book of Job, as you have these discussions going on, and it's like this back to black and white. That's with Bildad, Sophaz, and all the other guys, what they are trying, black and white, that's it. You know the problem with Job? He's a gray area. Okay, he as far as we knew, he was walking with God, but he's got every indication that he's wicked. He's lost his family. He's in torment all the time. Certainly a righteous man's not going to experience that. And so it creates a problem in the sense of how do you work this out? And I would just say, if you're prone to being self-righteous and you're prone to be legalistic, you'd have a real problem with Job. Because it would not compute in your head why this could be happening to someone truly righteous. You might say to yourself, let's look into his family a little bit more. We'll find something. We'll find something he did. And so Bildad is at an extreme, and he gives one analogy after another, and in an indirect, direct way is telling Job, you have gone so far into the darkness that you have now incurred the wrath of God in your life, and truly you're lost and your words mean nothing. That's what he's saying. Verse 18 again, he is driven from light into darkness and chased from the inhabited world. He has no offspring. Well, that's a slam right there to Job. Job lost those of his family. He has no offspring or posterity among his people, nor any survivor where he sojourned. He lost his servants. He lost all of his livestock. Verse 20, those in the west are appalled at his fate, and those in the east are seized with horror. Surely such are the dwellings of the wicked. That's the description of the wicked, Job. Does it fit? And then he adds, and this is the place of him who does not know God. Can you imagine? Looking him in a sense at his face and saying, the real problem is you don't really know God. And the struggle, the battle is that, you know what? We're going to talk about it in a minute. It's actually one of the greatest reasons for this struggle that's happening. And from Job's standpoint, him giving all this energy to even talk while he's suffering is because he does know God. And there's a wrestling match, and it's a completely different perspective, one side than the other. And of course, then there is, as well as we've mentioned it already, there's the wrestling that's not with flesh and blood. There's a struggle behind the scene of the enemy trying to in any way possible to bring into Job's perspective some doubts about himself. Right? Isn't that what this is all about? It's like this heavenly scene that we actually saw where God says there's no one like Job. And then that testing of Job to prove whether or not he would continue to live for the Lord. Well, that's behind the scene, and Satan does not want to lose it. And so he's throwing even this Job's way. So chapter 19, verse 1. Then Job responded, how long will you torment me and crush me with your words? That just tells you that he understands what the implication was, what Bildad really meant. Why are you crushing me with your words? Verse 3, these 10 times you have insulted me. You are not ashamed to wrong me. Even if I have truly erred, my error lodges with me. Ultimately, each person bears their own load. And those guys who are talking to him, they are not the ones who will be held responsible, ultimately, for what Job does. So Job says, listen, it all still comes back to me. If I'm wrong, but it's my wrong. It's not your wrong. So for you to crush me with your words, for you to come after me in the way that you do, that only demonstrates the fact that you have no place in your heart for me. I bear my own load, and I'll be responsible for it. Verse 5, if indeed you vaunt yourselves against me and prove my disgrace to me. Now, what's Job going to say now? Okay, if you're going to just go ahead anyway, and you're going to elevate yourself, and you're going to come against me, and you're going to bring disgrace in my life, what am I going to do about it? Verse 6, know then that God has wronged me and has closed his net around me. Speaking of traps and all of these nooses and different things that he described earlier where you can get caught by your own trap and your feet step on your trap. Well, listen, I didn't set my own trap. God set my trap. Know then that God has wronged me and has closed his net around me. I see. I just have to say this. It's like, okay, Job, you're suffering. You got your counselors around you who are supposed to help you saying that you're wicked. You know, your life is surrounded with horrible things. And the consensus is, even from your wife, the consensus is throw the towel in, buddy. Stop saying that God's doing this. But he will not do it. And later we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but let's just keep going. So he says God has wronged him and has closed his net around him. Verse 7. Behold, I cry violence, but I get no answer. I shout for help, but there's no justice. He has walled up my way so I cannot pass, and he has put darkness on my paths. Hey, you guys talked about darkness and light, and then I'm going to the darkness. Actually, God is putting darkness in my path, and I can't get away from it. Verse 9, he has stripped my honor from me and removed the crown from my head. I don't know if you've ever in your life, had the Lord do some wonderful things and, give you respect from others and in a sense exalted you and lifted you up and, brought an honor to you. And then circumstances happen and all of a sudden what he originally gave to you, you don't then have it anymore. So sometimes that is a very difficult thing to go through. It really does. It does test this of whether you began to focus more on the respect and the honor rather than the Lord, or whether you were thankful for it and content with it, and then when it was then a season you didn't have it anymore, that you're okay with it. Because it's not about that honor or exaltation. It's about you and the Lord and honoring him. It's a test. But I'll tell you what, Job was going through it. He would walk the streets and people would look at him as a man who loved God, who took care of his family, who was wealthy and who God had given so much. And so they would listen to what he had to say and they would respect his judgments. But all of that's been stripped away. All of it's been taken away, and Job experiences that as well. Verse 10, he breaks me down on every side, and I'm gone, and he has uprooted my hope like a tree. It doesn't have a lot of hope. But my thought, though, is if he doesn't have a lot of hope, why is he fighting so hard? He's fighting in this. And I know from the passages that he still does have hope, even though he says this. He still has hope, but he doesn't feel like he has hope because he doesn't see the result of that. Verse 11, he has also kindled his anger against me and considered me as his enemy. Well, that's an interpretation. He can't understand it any other way than all of this happening means that he's being considered an enemy of God, and God is doing it against him. And you know what's hard about going through the book of Job is the whole, most of the way through. You have questions that are answered, ultimate questions that are not answered, asked, but you don't necessarily on a regular basis get any answers. It's except that there are then in the midst of the struggle a revelation that will come from God himself and bring some definition. But as they went through this, and I mean this whole scene here, it was a back and forth. It wasn't something that if you looked at it or you participated in it, you'd think that much good was happening, even though God left a witness in the midst of it. Verse 12, His troops come together, God's troops come together and build up their way against me and camp around my tent. Remember the other week we talked about ruffians. There's a new perspective with Job that he realizes this is not just God, that God is actually, in a sense, gained a group to come against him. That somehow there are ruffians or troops that are actually, they've been given an assignment to actually give him these radical things in his life and to bring this, in a sense, demonstration of the fact that he's considered God's enemy. Verse 13. He has removed my brothers far from me, and my acquaintances are completely estranged from me. Remember last time we talked about the fact that, it's easy to make all the calamity as though it happened at the beginning. Those two stages, all right? And that, okay, now we're finally at the place. He's lost everything. He is covered with boils. He's on the ash heap. He's outside the city. And now he just is kind of enduring the suffering of his health. But really, that's the end of the story. No, things continued to happen. There were repercussions of what he went through. And one of them is that his own brothers were removed from him. His immediate family that he was raised in, they also were turning their back on him. He has removed my brothers far from me, and my acquaintances are completely estranged from me. My relatives have failed, and my intimate friends have forgotten me. Now, as I read that, I'll tell you the word that came to my mind. You know what? As good as sometimes we can be as people, our very nature is to be fickle. Meaning that you can have friends one day and then not have them the next, depending upon what's happening. Now, you would think that just like these ones who came to help him, that his family, his intimate friends would somehow stick by him. But as time has gone on, it's kind of like an eyesore. It's something that they really don't want to see. They don't really want to participate because it's going to mean that they've got to make sense of it. And in their own heart, it's abhorrent to even look at him. And as a result of that, he is estranged from them. The relationships with his relatives have failed, and his intimate friends have forgotten him. Now, I'm going to sound pessimistic a little bit. I don't intend to. But you know what? Unless somebody has the love of God in their heart, unless somebody who's really actually walking with God, the likelihood that that person is going to demonstrate any sort of faithfulness or loyalty is very, very little. And even if there is faithfulness or loyalty, when it's tested, it won't last. Because the truth of the matter is when you look at the Word of God, we love because He first loved us. It starts with Him. If you're a Christian, I think you're qualified to know the real difference between genuine love and just some sort of a terrible mimicking of what love is all about that sometimes we give to one another. And you know what? When somebody goes through a hard time and they struggle, that makes them so, in a sense, unlikable because they don't give us anything, they don't somehow benefit us in any way. I tell you, it's easy all of a sudden to distance yourself from folks. And that's exactly what he was experiencing, and I believe that was part of the trial, but it was in addition to everything else that happened. Those who would be next to him are no longer even there. And again, that's also another reason why Job is a type of Jesus. You know, his friends and his disciples actually, for the most part, abandoned him. And they ended up being like everyone else. They went away. And you know, when you stand for God and you do what God wants you to do, sometimes that's not going to bring you a lot of extra friendships and intimacy. It's going to actually mean you're more of a lonely person. Now, I'll be a witness. You know, I'd rather be lonely with God than have 1,000 friends. Because you know what? God is the source of all love and all loyalty, faithfulness, compassion. You know what? If I have him, I have enough. You know, and so, you know, sometimes you're going to get tested in your life of who's the most important person to you. What's the ultimate, what really matters? Sometimes it's through hard situations where that face that used to be the one who encouraged you all the time, well, where'd they go? What happened to that continued encouragement that I had in your relationship? Well, I can't even find you anymore. And even when we are together, there's an estrangement there. And Job experienced that. Verse 15. Those who will live in my house and my maids consider me a stranger. I'm a foreigner in their sight. I mean, he's their boss. And yet because of his state, they just have nothing to do with him. I call to my servant, but he doesn't answer. I have to implore him with my mouth. My breath is offensive to my wife. I think this is more than just he had bad breath. I think that this has got to also be that even his relationship with his wife, along this line, she doesn't know him anymore because of everything now that characterizes him. And it's affected his relationship with her. And I am loathsome to my own brothers. No one wants to be with me. Verse 18, even young children despise me. Could be they would even be afraid of him. Yeah. I rise up and they speak against me. There's no respect. Verse 19, all my associates abhor me, and those I love have turned against me. My bone clings to my skin and my flesh, and I've escaped only by the skin of my teeth. So, I mean, it's bad. And he looks horrible. And his very character has been affected by this. He's barely making it. And he ends here by saying, pity me, O my friends, for the hand of God has struck me. Why do you persecute me as God does, and are not satisfied with my flesh? I just want to say here, you know, the question, why is this happening to Job? Why is it happening to Job? Well, quickly go back to Job 2. And this is the answer. This is the answer that is the unseen of the reality of God and his purposes, and then Satan and his purposes. Chapter 2, verse 1. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them to present himself before the Lord. The Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, from roaming about on the earth and walking around on it. The Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? For there is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, fearing God and turning away from evil. And he still holds fast his integrity, although you incited me against him to ruin him without cause. Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has, he will give for his life. However, put forth your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse you to his face. So the Lord said to Satan, behold, he's in your power, only spare his life. Go back to chapter 19. So I asked the question, as we're here in the midst of Job even having more suffering because all of his friends, all of his family have left him. He has people looking at him and wanting to stay distant from him because of how abhorrent he is. And my question is why is this happening to Job? I'll tell you, one reason it's happening because what we just read, this battle, this struggle in the eternal places, that's why this is happening. And there's a test involved in it all, right? That's why it's happening. But can I also just say this? Another reason why this is happening is because Job is in fact the man who God said that he is. That he is someone with integrity. He is upright. And ultimately, the big thing is, he is someone who has demonstrated faith in God. I'll tell you what, if Job didn't have faith in God, none of this would be happening. First of all, it would not have even been a test. God would not say to Satan, hey, have you seen my servant Job? But also from the standpoint as this has gone on, it would have ended quite early, I think. I think he would have given up and he would have actually done what his wife said, curse God and die. If he didn't have faith. The reason why this is happening is because he's actually still holding on. He still has a faith. And he will use these words, God is my enemy, those sorts of things. But at the same time, you'll hear him say that God will remember me. And God will show. And so, you know what? It's in agony, he continues to demonstrate the fact that the reason why this keeps going is because he's actually he's passing the test. He's passing the test. So, you know what? When God puts you through a trial, if it doesn't get better sooner, it might not be because you're failing the test. It might be because you're passing it. Does that make sense? You might not be doing everything wrong. You might actually be doing things right. You're standing firm. Well, if you stand firm, that means you've got everything coming against you. You don't stand firm and then everything just melts away. You stand firm and you stand firm against anything that would then test you in your faith. Yeah, at some point it will be over. I heard somebody say one time that, in relation to temptation, Jesus never gave in to temptation. Never. Jesus always passed the test. So did he have it harder or easier than someone who doesn't pass the test? If you go through the entirety of the trial, you're going to have it harder. As opposed to at some point in the middle of it, you give up. You say, I'm just going to go back to my own knee-jerk reactions and just handle it on my own. Well, what you did is you took a shortcut. You took the easy way out. But you know what? If you stay in the trial, then that trial will do everything that God wants for it to do in your life. It will accomplish God's purpose for you. So, quickly, go with me to Matthew 16. Matthew 16, verse 13. Just to make this point. Matthew chapter 16, verse 13. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he was asking the disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? And they said, well, some say John the Baptist and others Elijah, but still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He said to them, but who do you say that I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said to him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who's in heaven. So God had taken the disciples off to the side, let them have some rest, and then he asked them the question, who do people say that I am? And then he purposely said, but who do you say I am? And that's when Peter says, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And he says that you're blessed, okay? So I would say that was probably a pinnacle. That was a high point in Peter's life. That he realized that, and actually his Lord said, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah. It's always a good thing to have the Lord use your full name, well, maybe not always, but anyway. You got it. You got revelation from the Father, and you know who I am, right? Go down to verse 21. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed and be raised up on the third day. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid it, Lord. This shall never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You're a stumbling block to me, for you are not setting your mind on God's interests, but on man's. So we had the peak, we had the high point in Peter's life, but just right after that, probably because he had some pride, he's taking the Lord to the side and saying, you are not going to go to the cross. That is just not appropriate, Lord. You can't do it. And we read in the other accounts that the other disciples were listening. And that's why Jesus basically looked at him and said, get behind me, Satan, because he knew Satan was using Peter to try to deviate him from the cross that he must bear. And then Jesus said this, verse 24, then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and when it will then repay every man according to his deeds. And can I just say that the dichotomy there is just incredible. There is a revelation that comes to Peter that Peter realizes Jesus is the Christ, and he makes this statement, as he should have. And it's glorious, and it demonstrates that the Father revealed that to him. But then right after that, Jesus starts right on in to say, okay, now that you know that I'm the Christ, know that I have to suffer. It means we're going to Jerusalem, and I'm going to be actually arrested, and I'm going to be spit on, and I'm going to be beaten, and then I'm going to be crucified, and that is what it means for me to fulfill being the Messiah and being the one who gives his life for this world. Well, Peter didn't like that. Peter didn't want that. He thought, no, if he's the Messiah and we're his followers, we're going to reign with him. And he couldn't hear it. And there was a battle going on because the enemy of our souls is using Peter against Jesus in that moment. And that's when Jesus says, listen, if you're going to follow me, it doesn't mean in any way you will not have the comfort to know that people are really going to understand it. You're not necessarily going to have family. You're not necessarily going to have friends or anyone actually pat you on the back. But in fact, you're going to have to pick up your own cross too. Because to follow Jesus is not, it's a wonderful thing, but it's not always an easy thing. There's hardship with it. There's sacrifice that comes with it. If you go out to look for your life, well, you're going to lose it. And that expression there, you know what? If you lost it and gained the world, what would you have? Nothing. You would be considered a fool by God that you would exchange your life with Jesus Christ for what the world has to offer. And back to Job. Job is in that position. He's actually making a stand because he believes that he was acceptable to God, not because of what he did, but because of what God had been doing with him. And he's holding on to that in every way he possibly can. Even though back then the revelations were much, much less than the time of the New Testament and today. But he struggled because he was going to faithfully seek God out on this and not let it go. You know what? What did it cost him? I think it cost him his relationship with others. It cost him his family. It cost him everything that mattered to him. So the question is, was Satan right? Skin for skin. You know? You attack a man's skin and listen, he'll curse you to your face. Well, listen, Job went through a whole lot more than that. And he never cursed God. He questioned God, but he did not curse God. And he maintained his faith. And there's an example for us. You're going to get challenged. You're going to be put in situations where in your life you'll wonder, I'm following Lord. Is this worth it? You know, there's a lot of challenges right now. I don't understand what's really going on, but then it ties back to your faith. Are you going to believe God and keep going and stay faithful? Because this is very, very, very tiny and minuscule, this life here on this world. So you don't live your life for here. You don't make that exchange where you somehow then trade off and find yourself in a place where you gave up what really mattered for something that matters. It's going to perish. It doesn't have anything that will be a lasting value. Well, quickly, back to Job. And let me finish. So right in the middle of him saying all of these things of all his friends, his wife, his intimate acquaintances, and so forth, turning their back on him, and he cries out then, look at this, verse 23, "Oh, that my words were written. Oh, that they were inscribed in a book." Well, Job, somebody has a plan. And, you know, could you imagine if somebody told him, listen, you know, whatever, 3,000-4,000 years from now, people all over the world are going to be reading what happened to you. You know, 3,000-4,000 years from now, everybody's life is going to be impacted by what happened to you and how you stood for me. But he couldn't see it. You know, don't underestimate what God does when you can't see. Verse 24, "That with an iron stylus and lead they were engraved in the rock forever." Well, they were in the rock of God's word. Verse 25, "As for me, I know that my Redeemer lives, and at last he will take his stand on the earth." How does he know that? There's no way he could know that. It's like he's like beside himself. He says all these things that God is his enemy and so on and so forth, but then he'll make these incredible statements that he has God giving him some things. Yes, I am going to put your words in a book. And also, by the way, there's a kinsman redeemer. There is someone who, yeah, you know what? All your friends left, but there's a relative of yours that is closer than a brother. And God gives him that insight. I know that my kinsman redeemer lives, the one who will defend me, the one who will actually stand by me, who will understand, and he'll never leave. And at last he will take his stand on the earth. Even after my skin is destroyed, yet from my flesh I shall see God. Yeah, remember we were reading about it earlier that his skin was being eaten away? Well, okay, my skin is destroyed, okay, but yet from my flesh I will see God. How does he know that? It's a statement to the fact that he's going to have a glorified body one day. And God shows it to him. When I myself whom I myself shall behold, and whom my eyes will see, and not another. So even the fact, again, that he makes a statement, he's going to see God, demonstrates the fact that there's an inner pathway into his heart that he doesn't even realize yet, that the Holy Spirit's revealing certain things to him and giving him counsel to help him through. God isn't leaving him totally on his own. Even the hardship of this aspect of his suffering, he's losing all of his friends, all of his family, brings the insight that there's a kinsman redeemer. Because a kinsman redeemer means you got kin. But the kin is actually supernatural. It's Jesus himself. It's the very one who would then give his life on your behalf to save you and step in and redeem what it was that belonged to you. And so he ends there by saying, end of verse 27, my heart faints within me. If you say, how shall we persecute him? And what pretext for a case against him can we find? You guys, if you want to just continue to be critical, be critical. But listen, I want to tell you something. Just as I've just mentioned God and seeing God, verse 29, then be afraid of the sword for yourselves. For wrath brings the punishment of the sword, so that you may know there is judgment. He actually preaches to them. He says, listen, be careful what you say. By your standard of measure, it will come back to you. If you judge me, you can expect that God will judge you.